Joining me is Iraq veteran, Las Vegas attorney Craig W. Drummond, here to talk about his new book, Saving Sandoval. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
We do appreciate that. And I know this book has been 10 years in the works. It takes some time to write a book with this kind of detail, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It's a slow process. Life kept getting in the way.
Yeah, that is life, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, you led the defense team for an Army sniper who was ordered to shoot, then charged with murder. First of all, how did you get this type of a case?
Sure. I started out as a prosecutor for the Army. I was a federal military prosecutor, and I was down in Fort Bliss, Texas. Yeah. And the Army headquarters sent me orders and said, "You're going to Iraq." And I was reassigned to the Army Trial Defense Service, which are the attorneys who defend service members. And as soon as I got to Iraq, I was detailed and assigned the case of Jorge G. Sandoval, Jr. Tell
us what happened that day.
Well, essentially my boss came in and handed me the charge sheet, which had all these extremely serious charges. It was outlined as a war crime, a shooting on the battlefield. And at that time, I really didn't know anything else about it other than, wow, I need to figure out what's going on with this case.
When you met with him, was he frightened? Was he assertive in what he did was correct? Tell us a little bit about that.
He did not know what was going on. He had actually been home on leave in Laredo, Texas, from Iraq, his 2 weeks of leave, and the military picked him up there and then flew him to the confinement facility in Kuwait. He had never met with an attorney. No one objective, or at least on his side, had ever explained to him what was going on. So when I flew to Kuwait and met him at the confinement facility, I was the first person trying to do my best to explain what was going on, and I was brand new to the case, so I was trying to figure it out myself.
And what did he tell you of the account in his eyes?
What he had told me was he thought everything was legitimate. What he had told me was he wasn't sure why the government and his command had decided to pursue murder charges. And I told him, let's try to figure it out. Let's get all the evidence. Let's begin interviewing witnesses from our perspective and go from there.
This book that you wrote details the entire trial, which took place, as you mentioned, in a U.S. military compound on the outskirts of Baghdad, I should say. How does this differ from, what would happen here in the States, if you will?
Sure. There's a couple differences. The Army and some of the other branches, but mainly the Army, will actually try cases where they occur. For example, in Korea, in Vietnam, and even Gulf War, we'll actually try it there. If we have to put up a tent and fly in a judge, the Army will do it there because the witnesses are there, the evidence is there, and it can be done a lot quicker. This occurred outside of Baghdad. Some differences are in a military trial, it's on military members, so it can start at 7 in the morning and go all night if necessary. In addition, we had to take some breaks because the compound we were on were receiving mortar attacks. So that's a little different than what would happen down at the RJC, hopefully here in Las Vegas.
Right. You were awarded yourself a Bronze Star. You served as a captain, attorney in the U.S. Army JAG Corps. With your experience, this obviously was so important to you to get the acquittal.
Well, it was. It was very important. The case was very important to me. I felt like this was a soldier being treated unjustly. And as a lawyer, when you have that happen, and it's such serious charges with such serious possible consequences, it's scary. And I did everything I could do to fight for him. And fortunately, I think at the end of the day, fortunately, I think there was some justice.
What kind of message do you think it sent, the acquittal?
Well, I will say this. Warfare is changing, and I think we as Americans have to realize that. And what I mean by that is the enemy is no longer wearing a clear uniform. It's no longer a clear military compound. And that's the same in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think as Americans, we need to realize that. We need to realize the pressures, the uncertainties we're putting our service members in. And we need to judge them with that, not 20/20 hindsight.
Thank you so much for your insight. I'm so looking forward to reading this book myself. Saving Sandoval, where is it available for folks who'd like to read it?
Mainly it's available on Amazon right now, barnesandnoble.com as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sherry, we're going to toss it over to you now.
All right. Thanks so much.